nobody.
Jaylen Brown.
Your superstars have off games.
Follow us on social media at Celtics Talk Weekly. What's going on, everybody, and welcome back into Celtics Postgame Live. I am your host, Rob Ate, and I'm with my co-host, Seamus Zarlingo, a.k.a. Celtics Every Day. The Boston Celtics take care of business on the road as they defeat the Brooklyn Nets 109-103 behind a 39.6 assist, 6 steal effort from Jason Tatum. The Boston Celtics have officially gone up in the series against the Brooklyn Nets, 3-0. Seamus, there's a lot to talk about tonight from a defensive, offensive standpoint. You know, Celtics got Robert Williams back. He didn't play a lot, but when he was playing, we saw some good, stretches of basketball out of him. But, most importantly, what we saw from the Celtics tonight is the Nets kept knocking on the door, whether it was putting the game back down to 3. But the Celtics, they stayed true. They really didn't give up the lead once they grabbed it late in that first quarter. And, how big was tonight's win, kind of putting the nail in the coffin on the series?
Well, tonight's win, we all know the numbers when a team goes down 3-0 in a 7-game series. 0-143 all time. 143 teams have gone down 3-0 in a 7-game series. 0. Absolutely 0 have come back. So the Celtics, a little bit of pressure in a sense that you don't want to make that a 1-143. But right now, the Celtics are in total command of this series. And tonight, it really felt like the Celtics were in command of the game the entire way through. The Nets definitely throughout the contest threw many, many punches where they just kept fighting, but they were clearly mismatched throughout tonight. And the Celtics moving forward right now, they want to get this done in Brooklyn. They can get this done in Brooklyn. The Nets look absolutely defeated. Okay, they have good fight in them, but they're clearly mismatched. Their lack of wings, their lack of, right now, other offensive options outside of KD and Kyrie, and their lack of defense out there is just too overwhelming for them to overcome. They have 2 of the best scorers in the NBA, but when those 2 guys are being hounded the way they are in this series, it's so tough to get going and stay consistent on that end of the floor. And the Celtics, they just kept on going at them, shielding punches, throwing them back, right back at the Nets, and overcoming this wave in the fourth quarter that seemed like the momentum a little bit was shifting towards Brooklyn, and every single time it went towards Brooklyn, the Celtics responded. They overcame adversity. They were very resilient down the stretch, and they have a 3-0 lead now. They have one more win in the series to just send the Brooklyn Nets home, the same team who last year sent the Celtics home, and we all thought afterwards they might rule the East for the next 10 years. The Celtics have a major opportunity in front of them right now, and they ultimately have to close out this series, and I believe they will.
Oh, yeah. I mean, this team, I think tonight they got it done on the defensive end. This was a kind of a grit and grind type of game, I thought, out of the Celtics. 12 of 39 from beyond the arc. I mean, they shot a good 50% clip from the floor, rather, 42 of 84. I thought rebounding wise, I think they gave up a decent amount of second chances. We still won the rebounding battle by 1. I'm just very impressed with how consistent this Celtics team has been playing. And, I feel like I kind of said it towards the end of the season. One thing that's going to keep this Celtics team alive and afloat through the playoffs is this defense. But I didn't expect to see this defense this good against top talent in the league. I mean, Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant are 2 guys who are arguably top 5 scorers in the league right now. Both of them. They both could be seen as top 5 scorers. We know what they can do, but the Celtics have completely eliminated them from the equation. It's essentially, I mean, if you look at this box score, Seamus, in a game where Bruce Brown gives you 26, Seth Curry gives you 10, Patty Mills gives you 12, Claxton gives you 13, and Blake Griffin gives you 8, you would assume the Brooklyn Nets had won that game by 30. But if you look at the box score, Kyrie Irving 6 of 17 on 16 points, 9 assists, right? Moved the ball around great for the most part. I mean, he only had 2 turnovers, but then Kevin Durant only took 11 shots. That shows you that Boston really wasn't letting KD get to his spots and has really messed him up, because Kevin Durant is down 2-0, is not taking 11 shots in a playoff game, right? Like, we've never seen that before. He only had 16 he had overall a solid 16-8-8, but then you scroll down and you see the turnovers: 5 for Kevin Durant, 5 for Bruce Brown, 4 for Nick Claxton, 21 team turnovers. The Celtics
A
refused to
lot.
let this Brooklyn Nets team breathe. And this was a game where I kind of had a feeling that, Brooklyn was going to hang around. They're at home. Maybe, Boston has one of those games where they can't close it out, right? You're on the road, and I thought they were going to get it done in game 4. I'm going to be completely honest. But the Boston Celtics are just showing how good they can be. I don't think you put this Brooklyn Nets team up against the 7 other teams in this postseason, maybe Miami, but I don't think they're down 3-0 to any other team in the playoffs. I think the Boston Celtics defense is at such a high level. And when you have Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum combining for what? 72, not 72. Quick math, 63 points, or 62 points, you're going to win the ball game. And this defense has just been amazing. As Ian Angelo joins us in. Ian, you know the drill. Reactions, comments, thoughts on tonight's game, 109-103 victory against the Brooklyn Nets in game 3.
Sorry,
with us? Yeah, you're good. You're good.
What was that? I'm sorry.
Oh no, so you're good. Just initial comments, reactions. Your takeaways from tonight's what I'm going to call series-ending win, even though it's not series-ending yet.
It's not over, but man, the Brooklyn Nets are playing like it is. I mean, they had a little bit of fight towards the end, but I mean, the Celtics just held on, and it was really led by Tatum for most of the game, and Jaylen Brown just took over in the fourth quarter because Steve Nash thought it was a good idea to play Blake Griffin, who hasn't played in like a month. He thought that was a good idea, but Jaylen Brown just took over in the fourth quarter, and the Celtics are now 1 game away from sweeping the Brooklyn Nets. Who would have thought we'd be saying that? We would be able to sweep the Brooklyn Nets, or at least be in the position to sweep.
It's absolutely insane that we're in this position. We were all saying last week, 6 days ago, that, this series should go 6, and if it goes 6, maybe even 7 games. And now, after game 3, I just don't see any answers for the Brooklyn Nets. And I don't know what program I mentioned it on, but I was waiting for the moment in which the Celtics, a moment came to realization for everyone that the Celtics have the Nets number, right? After the first 2 games, the Celtics, of course, pulled out two close wins right there, one being a buzzer beater, the other one being a resilient comeback in the fourth quarter. And then tonight, the Nets, they just looked completely outmatched. I mean, when you're throwing Blake Griffin out there late in the fourth quarter, somebody who hasn't played in over a month, essentially, and you're going out there, and at the end of the game, KD and Kyrie, they were pretty much just throwing up shots there at the end. When that sort of stuff is happening, that just screams desperation. And then potentially bringing back Ben Simmons in game 4, I almost think that was the plan in terms of, hey, I don't know if we can beat this team. If we go down 3-0, we think we might go down 3-0. Maybe he doesn't play game 4. Maybe that is the last ditch hope for the Nets in the series, that Ben Simmons comes back and turns the momentum towards them a little bit. The Nets right now, they are just not equipped to win this series. The Celtics have way more players. They are way more versatile. They have way more offensive options. It's honestly, if you just look at it, a lot of people, including us, of course, it seems like we put way too much stock in, okay, these are the 2 best scorers potentially in the NBA. They're going to go out here and they're going to give us a run, and they potentially could take this to 7 games. That has not been the case at all thus far. Those 2 guys have been completely compromised, and we're letting everybody else on the Nets beat us. And what's happening is these guys, they can't hold up against the Celtics team. You can't hold up against 39-point Jason Tatum. You can't hold up against Jaylen Brown, who looks as confident as he looked. He's looked more confident right now than he has in probably 2 years since the bubble, it feels like, especially in that fourth quarter there from Jaylen Brown. And the other guys, too. I mean, Grant Williams was huge tonight. Super physical performance from him. Daniel Tice, Robert Williams is back now, and he'll continue to play more minutes moving forward. I thought Derek White was nice as well. Al Horford didn't take too many shots at all tonight, but hit one of the biggest shots of the entire game in the corner. there in the fourth quarter. So, the Celtics, this is just impressive. It really is. I can't wait until the semifinals. We got to close the series out, of course. That's the main focus right now. But looking ahead just a little bit, I mean, this team is equipped to make a long, long run right now. And it's really getting to that point where, something special might be brewing here.
Like most definitely, and you got to look at the Bucks situation too. Middleton's out indefinitely. They got to take care of business in a 2-1 series against Chicago. Obviously, they're playing a game 4, I believe, tomorrow night in Chicago. Tomorrow afternoon at 1:00. Against the Bulls. So they got to take care of business there before we can say who our next opponent is. But you got to figure right now the Boston Celtics, right? After game 1, it was Kevin Durant, bad shooting night, right? Kyrie Irving, these guys are generational talents, and they are. Yeah, I'm not going to deny that, but that's what the story was after game 1, and then game 2 rolls around, and the same thing kind of happened. Yet Kyrie was was out of it, and then the idea was, once they get back to Brooklyn, right, they're going to figure this thing out. They're going to snag one in Brooklyn. This is still going to go 6 games, 7 games, right? And the Boston Celtics came out and they said no. We are the best team in basketball, plain and simple. That's how they've been playing. And all bias aside, I still think the Phoenix Suns, right? When they're healthy, they're right up there, probably above us. Golden State playing really well as well. But I mean, what the Celtics can do on both ends of the floor. They have 2 guys that can give you 50 each. And then everyone else, they have the defensive player of the year. They have Robert Williams, who's a potential all-NBA or all defensive first team player, right? So this team is built for playoff success. It's just, how dominant are they going to be here, right? Because, we saw it towards the end of the season, right, guys? Like, we weren't losing a lot. There were not a lot of games we were losing against some really good teams. Obviously, we lost to Milwaukee and Toronto, both, I believe, by inside 5 points, without some key players. But if the Celtics keep playing like this defensively, if the Celtics can eliminate the other team's best players like they are against Brooklyn, I mean, think about it like this, guys, especially with Middleton out. You don't got to do it with 2 players on almost any other team. You got to maybe Golden State. If we make some run and go to the finals, you'll have to do it with Golden State with Clay and Steph. But when you got Milwaukee, Chris Middleton's out. That's only 1 star. Maybe a Harden and Embiid if you see them, or Miami. You really only got Butler. Hero can give you buckets though, but I mean, you got to be feeling so well. So I mean, you got to be. I mean, they wanted Boston and they got Boston. This team is looking really good.
Oh yeah, shout out Milwaukee, by the way.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry, I'll let go in.
You got it.
I just want to shout out Milwaukee, 2-1. They're 2-1 with Chicago right now. Of course, blew them out in game 3. They play game 4 tomorrow, but they avoided Brooklyn. They could have easily had this spotlight right now where they're sweeping the Nets. Yet here we are. But go ahead. Sorry.
Real quick, sorry, I hate to cut you off again, Ian, but real quick, I don't think anyone can defensively do what the Celtics are doing against Kyrie and KD. So I think if you put them up against the 7 other teams, there's a good shot Brooklyn's up 2-1 in any of those series. That's my statement. Ian, take it away from me.
Yeah, so what I was going to say was, what did Kendrick Perkins say? It was the Boston Celtics Correctional Facility. And they are putting Kevin Durant in jail right now. I mean, granted, it's kind of hard to say that when he shot 54%, but he only had 11 shots. And
11.
They were not letting Kevin Durant get the ball. And when he did, outside of the couple times where he had a wide open shot, they had 2 people on him. They had 3 people on him. They had damn near the whole team on him, making sure Kevin Durant did not shoot the ball. And Kyrie Irving, he had a kind of another off night where, he shot 6 of 17 from the field and he was 0 of 7 from 3. So, like you said, the Celtics defense is one of the best defenses I've ever seen. And, I mean, at this point, you have to think, with the way the series is going, who knows if Ben Simmons comes back and if he even really makes an impact at all. You can see the Celtics sweeping the Nets. And it's just insane to think about because not only that, you had Jason Tatum, who didn't have the greatest shooting night, but he had 6 steals. 6.
Career playoff
Jason
high.
Tatum. I mean, Jason Tatum on the defensive end of the ball has just been so much fun to watch in this series. You know, when he took that offensive foul on Kevin Durant and he was on the ground, he was clapping, he was getting hyped. I mean, this is what, if that was in the Garden probably would have exploded if that happened in the Garden. So it's just so nice to see this entire team coming together as one. And now we have Robert Williams back. And, you know, the potential for this team is, you know, it's not even, you know, it's not even crazy to say the Celtics could be in the finals.
Yeah,
No,
most definitely.
no,
I mean, it's right now, you know, this team, we're in the midst of a moment, especially with Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, more geared towards Jason Tatum a little bit right now because, you know, we talked about this many times this season. 2020, Jason Tatum went from being a high-level role player to a star. And this year, this was his chance to jump into superstardom. And performances like tonight are exactly that. 39 points, 6 steals. If I can pull up his entire stat line here. 39 points, 6 steals, 6 assists, 5 rebounds, 13 of 29 shooting, and 4 of 13 3. Not too great from 3, but hit them when they mattered. Jason Tatum is on his way to being a top 5 player in the league. Right now, this feels like a passing of the torch in a sense where Kevin Durant, he's not played well this entire series. I don't know just what is going on with him specifically and him and Kyrie because, yes, the Celtics defense deserves a ton of credit for limiting these guys and limiting their shots and limiting their opportunities. But at the end of the day, you as a star player have to do everything you can when you're in this situation where you know the rest of your team isn't quite as stacked as the team you're going up against. You have to take over and to do everything you can to get shots off. And the fact Kevin Durant only took 11 shots tonight is just crazy. It's absolutely insane. I mean, even though the Celtics denial was amazing throughout most of the, you have to shoot the ball more. You have to find more opportunities. You have to fight more. Same thing with Kyrie. He seems like he's in this 2019 state of himself, or at least the end of 2019, where it doesn't really seem like he's being as aggressive. He's not. It doesn't feel like he's trying to get those shots at the rim, and he's putting defenders on their toes to where, you know, he can have opportunities on the perimeter more often than not. And I don't know what's happening with them exactly. I think it's a combination of they're just being hounded. This season has been just a mental roller coaster for them and their whole team, and it's been a sludge, and maybe they're just tired of it at this point and they want to get the season over with. But these are not characteristics of all-time great players whatsoever. Just in the background right now and the way they're not attacking the way you typically see them. And like I said, the Celtics defense deserves all the praise for limiting them and keeping them at bay. But, you know, some blame has to be shed on Kyrie and KD because these performances are they're atrocious for star players. They really are.
Most definitely. But, you know, as much as I want to sit here and praise the Celtics because they've done a phenomenal job, right, against KD, against Kyrie, you know, something we're going to see because, you know, I think it's safe to say we can address the next round. Obviously, some business to take care of in Game 4 if you want that sweep, and obviously Game 5 heading back to Boston. You know, job's not finished. Tatum said that in his post-game interview. But, you know, something you're going to see, I'd assume we take care of business here up 3-0. Historically speaking, we will. Next round, whether it's the Bulls or the Bucks, probably the Bucks, although the Bulls could give them a good run for their money without Middleton. You're not going to see coaching as bad as we're seeing, I don't think, in this series. You know, Budenholzer, he's been there. You know, he's got a ring. And even you want to look at the Eastern Conference Finals, you want to go that far, you're going to see either probably Eric Spoelstra or Doc Rivers, right? Doc Rivers, since the 2010 run, really, playoff track record's kind of been poor. But, you know, you're going to see a lot more experienced coaching and schemes here as we progress through the playoffs. And obviously, Brooklyn's got all the offensive firepower. in the East, really, you got to look at the East, and this Brooklyn team is probably the best offense just off of talent wise. Between Patty Mills and Seth Curry, what they can do off ball and shooting, and between Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving and how translucent they are talent on the offensive floor. But it's not gonna I don't think be this easy by any means for the rest of the playoffs, and I really hope Boston can continue this pattern. I think they will. But I'm interested to see how they respond when, we saw today, out of a timeout in the fourth quarter, or maybe it was at the third, but I want to say it was the end of the third, actually. Steve Nash has drawn up a play on the inbounds, and it results into a Jaylen Brown steal in a dunk. You won't see that poor execution that Brooklyn has been showing us in the later rounds, I don't think, against a team like Milwaukee or Miami or Philly. I don't think you're going to see that. And so I do think you might see a little learning curve with Boston. I think it's a 50-50 up in the air how they handle that. I'd assume they'd handle it well based off of how well they've been playing. But I do think that's something we have to look at and kind of be thankful for, is that Steve Nash just cannot get the job done for the Brooklyn Nets on the coaching aspect of things.
Definitely. And, I've been thinking about that a lot. Obviously, I'm not overlooking the Brooklyn Nets the rest of the series, but you have to take into consideration, and I'm not looking over Chicago either, but if we do end up playing Milwaukee, which seems to be, the plan right now, it's going to be interesting to see how Ime draws up schemes for Giannis. And even though Middleton's not playing as of right now, we don't know if he's going to be back in this series. So, we do have Robert Williams back, so that's better. We still have to wait for him to get his legs back under him. He looked pretty okay tonight. It is one of those things where, you're Steve Nash, his whole game plan really was just ISOing with Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving and hoping something went in. So, obviously you're not going to get that. It's going to have to be interesting because Ime is a first-year head coach. He's going to have to, scheme for this. He's going to have to make adjustments. And, I don't really think we can really know what we're going to get into until it actually happens.
Yeah. And the Chris Middleton part of the whole Milwaukee equation is so big because he's their guy who can hit shots off the dribble in isolation. I mean, Giannis, he can hit shots every now and then, but his main game is posting up and going towards the rim and creating shots that way and creating points that way, going towards the basket. And in isolation, the job really hinges on Drew Holiday and Chris Middleton in the half court. And Drew Holiday, quite honestly, has not really been you want your best isolation scorer in terms of, consistently hitting shots throughout a playoff series and even games. We've seen it last year. We've seen it this year already with him, where just he's not that efficient of a shooter every now and then. And missing Chris Middleton is going to be so huge for them. And I don't know how long he'll be out going forward, but if he doesn't come back earlier in that series, the Celtics have to jump on that opportunity right away, because the sooner he comes back, the sooner Milwaukee is going to be whole, right? And the Celtics right now, they just look like the scariest team. I think you look at the entire East right now, they're the only team where their opponent does not have one game right now. And then you look out West, Phoenix, injuries, Golden State looks whole, but they've had questions, and they're older, of course, so they're always going to have injury questions moving forward, or health questions in general. And the roadmap is there. The roadmap for the Celtics is all to go out and actually win a ring there, or not, and if not that, make the finals or make the conference finals. And right now, they need to close out the series against Brooklyn. It's not going to be easy. They have to keep going before we'll see whether or not the Nets actually roll over or not. But if tonight at the end of the game was any indication, they might have a little bit of fight left in them, but you never know until we actually get to that game. But they have to close out this series, and moving forward, they have to take advantage early in that Milwaukee series when Chris Middleton is out, because the sooner he comes back, the sooner Milwaukee is going to reach full strength. And even at that point, Celtics could be better than Milwaukee. Last month, I believe, or the last 3 games of the season, we went into Milwaukee with no Jason Tatum. They only beat us by 6. We kind of fell apart down the stretch. I mean, the Celtics, they can hang with any team. And right now, them Brooklyn Nets, I mean, that just displays it 100%.
I think, sorry, one more thing. It's kind of interesting now that we think about it in hindsight. Now Celtics have home court advantage against Milwaukee, which if they won that game, they could potentially have had home court advantage. And we know how much of an advantage it is to be in the Garden and how the Celtics play when they're in the Garden. So, I mean, like you said, we have to take advantage early against the Bucks because, say we split the 2 games at home. Granted, it's better than nothing, but at the same time, you really want to win at home, like every game that you can.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, we saw it in that we saw in that 2018 run. The only game at home we lost was that Game 7 against LeBron in the Eastern Conference Finals. And when you got LeBron coming in a Game 7 in the Eastern Conference Finals or anywhere, you got to think. I don't like our chances if we're in a Game 7 against LeBron, right? So, the recipe for the Celtics' success in this postseason. There is one team where you're not going to have home court, and that is Miami. However, home court or not, if you can manage to win one game, well, actually, that's a lie. You got to I'm talking about home court. You got to win one game on the road if you can take care of business at home. If you can protect the Garden like we've seen the Celtics do in the past, right? In that 2018 run, in that 2008, we were better on the road than at the Garden. But I believe so. I could be wrong. But, if you can protect your home court, you will win a playoff series very successfully. And it looks like from this little sample size we have, only 2 games, but it looks like the Celtics will find ways to win games at home. We saw them down 17. We've seen them up by 15, and the other team comes knocking back. Right? We've kind of seen both sides of the spectrum here in the playoffs in these 2 games. We've been up big and we've been down big, and we've managed to pull out a win in both of those games against 2 players who are historically very good down the stretch. So, it might be, I might be looking at it too, black and white here, but in my eyes, in a round against Milwaukee or Chicago, and, you got 4 out of the 7 games at home, I don't see a reason why we can't finish them off in 5 just off the sole fact of if you can steal one on the road. We've been a solid road team. If you can steal one in Milwaukee or in Chicago and you can protect home court, it's going to be tough for teams to come out and push these series further and further down to those games 6 and 7 if they can't win in Boston. And, historically speaking, Boston is a tough place to go into in the playoffs and come out with a win.
Yeah, another thing that we kind of need to take in consideration is we need to make sure we can stay at this level of defensive intensity as well as the playoffs go on. Obviously, we're not going to be as good as we were in the first game that we're going to be in like the 14th or 15th game. But we still need to have some level of intensity to where we know that we can solely win a game based off our defense if our shots aren't falling. So if that means, that means we can have the Garden behind the Celtics. They need to win these home games against the Celtics because, you don't know what's going to happen with Milwaukee. Maybe Chris Middleton comes back, and if you beat Milwaukee, who are you going to face? Philly? Are you going to stop Joel Embiid all 7 games? So it's going to be interesting to see what Ime does moving forward. And honestly, he's just putting on a coaching masterclass in the first 3 games of this series. And I mean, we're just going to have to see what he does against either Milwaukee or Chicago.
Yeah, and I should have mentioned this when I was talking about playing early and getting out early in a series with Milwaukee. They also have to close the series out quickly with Brooklyn. You don't really want to send this back to a Game 5 at home because at that point, it's great to win in front of the home crowd, but we saw last year, Brooklyn, look what happened with them when they played an extra game. I mean, Jason Tatum is partially responsible for the Bucks championship last year. Let me take you through this. Jason Tatum scores, I believe, 50. Well, it was 50 plus. I think it was 53 potentially in Game 3 last year against the Nets. That forced a Game 5. That's an extra game the Nets had to play, right? Game 1 of the Bucks series, James Harden goes out there and tears his hamstring in the first quarter of that series and is not the same for the rest of the series. Came back later and was pretty much just a decoy out there. Imagine if the Nets finished us off in 4 games last year and didn't have that extra game where they had to throw James Harden out there. The entire course of history of the Nets could be entirely different. And so that's why you have to close this series out. You don't want to risk further injury. You don't want to risk further exhaustion later on down the line. And you want to ultimately have as much time before the next series to game plan for your opponent. More time, more film study, more ideas, right? And so the Celtics, they have to close this series out early. But also, the point with this team right now, the Celtics, and just what makes me so confident team moving forward is their resiliency in these games. Every single game thus far, they've had major punches thrown at them. Major. You go back to game 1, Kyrie's hitting a ton of daggers late in that game, in the fourth quarter. He had 39 points, I believe, in that game. Game 2, they go down 17 early. They ended up coming back in that game and winning down the stretch in the fourth quarter. Of course, game 1, we saw the buzzer beater as well. Game 3, they have control throughout most of the night, 12-point lead in the second quarter. That's nearly evaporated by halftime. In the third quarter, they grab another pretty significant lead. That one's evaporated. And then all of a sudden, down the stretch, Blake Griffin, he comes out there. He plays solid for 3 minutes until he's gassed because he hasn't played in a month. He's gassed 5 minutes into his stint. He played well in that stint. Momentum was shifting towards the Nets. And what did the Celtics do? They threw haymakers right back to the Nets. I mean, this is exactly what you want to see out of a championship team. Their ability to not only take punches, but throw them back at the same time. And we've seen it every single game thus far against the Nets. And, of course, the competition is going to be much, much stiffer moving forward. Probably going to have to face Milwaukee. If we make the conference finals, it's probably going to be either Miami or Philly. And against those opponents, it's going to be the same story. They're going to punches. They're going to win games. So far, we haven't lost a game. They're going to win games. How does this team respond is the main question. How do they respond to the adversity? And so far through 3 games, it's been with nothing but resiliency, nothing but overcoming that adversity late in games. And it's been so impressive to see because earlier in the year, we saw Jason Tatum. I don't know if you guys saw his interview after the game, but he mentioned him blowing leads early in the season. Of course, well documented on this program when that was happening and our feelings towards that. But from that point to this point earlier, that point earlier in the season to this point, it's like 9 days. It's not even the same thing. I mean, that Wizards game where we missed 23 straight threes to start the game, grabbed a 6-point lead in double overtime, completely blew it. I mean, those days are it's not even the same team, not even the same year. It's just so far behind us. This team is here. They're ready. They're ready to contend, and they'll be ready to contend not only this year, but years past. And we're in a really, really good spot right now. And I'm excited. I'm very, very excited to see what their potential is moving forward because I think it could be a ring for sure.
Yeah, and something you said, Seamus, that was actually a very good point. I kind of want to build off that. We've seen the Celtics team in years prior. I texted you guys in the group chat about this. We've seen them go up 2-0, actually a lot. Whenever they kind of have home court, they've gone up 2-0. Going back to 2018, first round against Milwaukee, go up 2-0. That series went 7 games. Then fast forward to the 2018 Eastern Conference Finals, right? Went up 2-0, and we all know how that ended in Game 7 against LeBron. And then fast forward to 2020 against Toronto in the bubble, go up 2-0 against them. And, it took an OG Anunoby point with 0.6 seconds on the clock, hit a miracle shot, and that series went 7. So, we are up 3 games to nothing, right? In reality, we probably are moving on to the next round. However, the question is how many games is this going to go, right? How many games are we going to beat them in? Are we going to let them extend this series to potentially 5, or are we going to let it to 6, right? Are they going to get a win in and we got to go back home? And as nice as, winning at home is in front of your fans, Seamus, you make a great point. Look at last year. We got some guys who are on the, Horford's a little bit older. You don't want to put an extra 40 minutes on anyone's body this postseason when you don't have to. So I'd like to see the same Boston Celtics in Game 4. I think we will see them. I don't think this team has any motives to just stop pushing. But I want to sweep them. One, because of what they did to us last year. Two, because of Kyrie Irving. Three, I mean, they got Ben Simmons coming back, but I think that just might be a shit show. I think that really just might even add insult to the injury. That could go poorly. Um, it probably will go poorly from a defensive aspect for the Celtics. I mean, I don't even want to think about what the media is going to be saying if Ben Simmons plays poor or if Brooklyn gets swept. So there's a lot of work for the Celtics to do to get to that banner 18 that it sounds like they're all aiming for, they're all shooting for, they all believe they can get. But Seamus, you make a phenomenal point here. You cannot prolong this series. You want to get this done. You got Robert Williams, who's already kind of trying to get back into the groove of things. Let him get an extra week of practice before the next series instead of a couple days, and let him game plan for most likely Milwaukee, but potentially Chicago as well.
Yeah, and just with prolonging the series, this at the end of the day, until the end of this series, but KD and Kyrie have not played well this whole time, but they're still these players who have performed time in and time out in the playoffs. And to not have at least one performance outside of Kyrie's game performance, go their way would be insane. And in Game 4, I wouldn't put anything past the Nets and them, rallying in game at home. But the Celtics, they have to take care of business. They're completely outmatching the Nets at the moment, and the Nets know it. They know it. I mean, it's no secret out there. It looks very lopsided. The Celtics look like they can get whatever they want offensively, whereas the Net always looks like there's certain answers. Honestly, it looks like the flip-flop of last year. Our offense is moving with an efficient pace. We're passing the ball a lot. We're making cuts to the rim, finding easy opportunities at the rim, going aggressively towards the basket, filling the paint, kicking out for three. Whereas the Nets, you look on that end, it's iso ball. It's, hey, man, it's your turn. It's my turn. It's your turn. We're just going to try to find a bucket out here some way, somehow. And that was the Celtics last year. It was Tatum, Brown, or Brown didn't play in the playoffs last year, but Tatum, go out there and find us a bucket. And of course that's not going to work. A 7-game series, a team that is elite. And right now the shoe is on the other foot. The tables have turned. I almost said the Michael Scott line, the Michael Scott line of the turntables, which didn't make any sense in the show, but that's exactly what's happening right now. Is the Celtics, they're the efficient team and the Nets are the inefficient team, and it's only a matter of time before the Celtics send them home.
Yeah, and before we close out the show, I want to bring up a question. I got something I just read on Twitter that's very, very intriguing, especially with the way Jason Tatum has played this series. And this was a big test for him. We all said that coming to the playoffs, right? If there was a time for him to make a statement, to be called, if you want to be top 5, top 8, this was the series to do it, just because of the pure star power of a Kevin Durant. Kevin Durant and Kyrie match up in the first round. You don't see that every day for the Celtics, or really in the NBA. You don't really see those two as a 7 seed. But this guy, Jason Tatum, he may just be a top 3 two-way player in the NBA. I mean, all credit goes to Udoka and all credit goes to the Celtics team for what they've done against Kevin Durant. But Jason Tatum has just wanted it more. He has just, his wingspan, his athleticism, his toughness, his strength. He's gotten very strong the last offseason, and we've really seen that this year. Defensively, he has shut down Kevin Durant essentially every single possession they have matched up against each other. And that's not an overstatement. I have stats to back that up. I mean, we've seen Jason Tatum just lock up Kevin Durant and put him in jail. And I'm thinking, and I'm, top 3, Jason Tatum, Giannis. Is there anyone else who's two-way better than him? When Kawhi Leonard's healthy, I'd say Kawhi Leonard. But, I mean, this guy is elite offensively. All-NBA first-team talent. right? He's a guy that is probably a top 3 scorer in the NBA. Him, KD, Steph Curry. Top 3 probably. Maybe LeBron James this season. And you got Luka, but Tatum's a better scorer, I think, all around on all levels than Luka Doncic is. So Tatum's top 5, and I think is scoring, top 3. Defensively, this man is an all-defensive second-team player, in my opinion. I think this guy is that good defensively. He took that step this year. So is it crazy to say, guys, that Jason Tatum might just be a top 3 all-around two-way player in the NBA right now?
I mean, you make a good point, Rob. And I was trying to spend the time that you were talking thinking of other people outside of Giannis.
And
Joel
Kawhi, when
Embiid
healthy.
and Kawhi,
Joel
obviously.
Embiid.
Joel Embiid, maybe.
Joel Embiid.
I would probably
Yeah.
say. So, as of right now, I would say he's probably 3 right now. Kawhi's not healthy,
Yeah.
but if Kawhi can come back and be what he used to be, he'll probably be there. But this is just a testament to how great Jason Tatum has been and how much he's improved. And, there's some players where, they want to score the ball, but they don't want to put the same effort on defense. Jason Tatum wants to put the effort on defense, and he's showing that he wants to put the effort on defense. And, for a while this season, even during the time where the Celtics were making their incredible stretch down the end of the year, I felt like most people were underrating Tatum's defense. People were not paying attention to how good Tatum was improving as a defender. And now that he's on the biggest stage where the lights are the brightest against one of the best scorers of all time in Kevin Durant, he's arguably the first or second best scorer in NBA history. I mean, he is absolutely locking him up any single time that they're matching up against each other. And it's just awesome to see how much Jason Tatum has improved throughout his entire career.
Yeah, and we give the injury pass, of course, for him being one of the best two-way players when healthy. I'm gonna give the injury pass to Anthony Davis as well for that. If he comes back the same as 2 years ago, Anthony Davis, we could probably throw in Paul George, but I mean, yeah, we'll have to see with him. If we're gonna give Kawhi the injury pass, because we haven't seen him at all this season, and we won't see him until October. Same thing with Anthony Davis. Paul George could probably slot in there as well, but I don't think he's as elite as some of these other guys, so he might not be in the conversation. Or at least a couple of years ago he would have been, but now he's dropped down just a tiny bit there. And, of course, in the postseason, we all know the record behind him. But Jason Tatum, I don't think that's, crazy to say he's a top 3, top 5 two-way player. I mean, I'm sure the list is probably a little bit bigger than we think, but, I mean, Jason Tatum is definitely at the top in terms of players or best all-around players in the league. His two-way ability is amazing. It really is. And offensively, he is reaching a level that it's really eerie, where he looks like Kobe Bryant. He looks like Michael Jordan sometimes. Some of the moves that he makes, some of the just 3-level scoring shots that he's able to make throughout a game is just mind-boggling. We'll go back to that statement. And then defensively, I want to just abandon every early season narrative on Tatum, because clearly early in the season he did not care as much as he cares right now, because defensively his effort level is unmatched. It really is. It's unmatched by anyone out on the floor. When you have that physique and you have that skill level on defensive end of the floor, and you have that length and you're putting in that effort out there, that's a scary player. It really is. And combine that, of course, with the offensive end of the floor, and you really have a franchise level player. And that's exactly what Jason Tatum is with the Boston Celtics. I have random moments in the day where I just randomly just get really happy because Jason Tatum is on my basketball team. He's on my favorite basketball team. It's crazy. He's that good, folks. He's that good, where you just have moments in the day where you go, yeah, this guy's on my basketball team. I bet Milwaukee fans can probably relate with Giannis. Philadelphia fans can relate with Joel Embiid. You can go down the line. Lakers fans, they probably could relate with LeBron, although, there's not a bond there as there is here with drafted players, of course. But Jason Tatum, we could talk on him for hours and hours on end, because he's been absolutely spectacular during this playoff run. And right now, this is a major opportunity for him to build his resume, and he's doing it right in front of our face. We're going to talk about this in 20, 30 years. Who are the best players of all time, or who are the best players of Celtics history, and what were the best moments? This is a moment. This is a moment for Tatum right now in these playoffs, and I think it's going to pay off later on down the line. We're going to continue to see it series after series, and hopefully, of course, we're going to be there for a long while, hopefully into June.
Oh,
Yeah.
one more thing before we head off. I know we're approaching almost an hour talking about this game. Can we talk about Jaylen Brown and how much he's improved? I mean, it feels like Jaylen Brown's been underrated this entire season. You know, he wasn't an all-star this year. You know, they weren't even talking about him. They were talking about just splitting him up, and people were saying that he wasn't even better than guys like Fred VanVleet at one point in the year. I mean, there was a time where we had serious doubts about Jaylen Brown, and tonight, I mean, normally, Tatum for his fourth quarter, heroics, Jaylen Brown just put on a show. And the fact that now Jaylen Brown is going to be able to, he's showing people that, yes, he is one of the most dominant players, which makes Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown one of the best duos in the NBA right now.
Yeah, I've been really impressed with how Brown has answered and responded down the stretch in both fourth quarters. Now, it kind of feels like Brown is our first punch closer, and then Tatum kind of closes the deal with like a minute and a half, 2 minutes left. That's what I've gotten the vibe with this past couple games. Brown, he did it again. Brooklyn came, knocking on the doorstep. And he responded. He kind of worked Blake Griffin once he the second he noticed Blake Griffin was gassed, he worked him. A step back three, drive to the lane a couple times, and then, we all saw what he did. We stomped on the brakes on Patty Mills for a nice little pull-up mid-range. I mean, Jaylen Brown needs his flowers. This guy is an all-star, in my opinion, and he has all NBA potential. He is arguably one of the second best players on a basketball team in the NBA, in my opinion. Obviously, you got like Anthony Davis, you got, Paul George, there's the higher up, but Jaylen Brown, I think, is up there with them. Defensively, what he does, you want to talk about great two-way players in the NBA, Jaylen Brown's name will be up there. And I do think, obviously we got to close out the show, but I do think this year was an exception. I don't think he'll miss an all-star game for the next 5 to 10 years, I don't think, from here on out. If the Celtics were the 2 seed back at the all-star break, we wouldn't have been talking about if Jaylen Brown's an all-star. I think we would have been talking if guys like Marcus Smart and Robert Williams deserved a little last edge into the all-star game. Obviously not, saying they're all-star caliber players, but just that's how seeding and all-star votes kind of work. Those 1-2 seeds kind of get that third. Like the Warriors got Andrew Wiggins. It's kind of just like if you're a high seed, you get that one player who probably just doesn't deserve it over a guy like Anthony Edwards or, Jared Allen or LaMelo Ball. But they're just on a successful basketball team. But yeah.
Yeah. And I think I talked about it either after game 1 or game 2, where the Celtics, they feel like they have this little, FU mentality at certain points in a game where they just like to go out and impose their will on other teams. They just kind of go, hey, we're just going to do this over and over again, and we don't care. You're not going to stop it, or we're going to do this to you defensively over and over again. You're not going to stop it. And tonight, that little Jaylen Brown stretch in the fourth quarter definitely fit into that agenda where possession after possession, when the Nets were going with Blake Griffin and we were going with Jaylen Brown, it did not matter. It was every single time down the floor. We're attacking Blake Griffin off the dribble. You're going to switch him to Jaylen Brown. We're going to switch him onto Jaylen Brown, and we're going at him every single time down the floor. And almost every single time we scored. It was either a Brown bucket at the rim, there was a Brown three, there was a Brown mid-range jumper, and also a Brown drive to the rim. And that's when he kicked it out to Tatum and got Tatum going down the stretch. So that little stretch there at the end of the fourth quarter where the Celtics really brought out that FU mentality that we've seen a couple times this series already, especially on the defensive end of the floor, that was really some watch. And those are really the entertaining points of basketball when two teams are dueling it out and one team sometimes is just a little bit more superior in what they run and what they do and what they're going to attack. And they do it over and over and over again, and no one can ever stop it. And that's exactly what happened in the fourth quarter late in this game tonight when Jaylen Brown took over. and eventually to Jason Tatum down the stretch took over as well. Amazing to see, amazing to watch.
Yeah, for sure. And obviously, the Boston Celtics will look to close out this series by bringing out the brooms on the Brooklyn Nets Monday night. That will be at 7:30, I believe. Let me just double check 7 o'clock tip off on TNT. That will be Monday at 7 again. We will have you covered back here right after the final buzzer for Celtics post game live. Once again, the Boston Celtics take care of the Brooklyn Nets 109-103. Jason Tatum led all scorers with 39 points. He also added along 6 assists, 6 steals, and 5 rebounds on his dominant Game 3 effort. We will see you guys Monday night live after the final buzzer, and go Celtics.